There, see if that works. Still gotta put the glasses on though. So, cut. This little tool works, but you gotta remodel it. And seems they get a keep on remodeling it, but the idea is to cut off this jagged edge here. And it's pretty hard to do with the tin snip, so this little tool, when it's working right, works pretty good. But we'll do a couple of them. You can only do one at a time. Tried my electric cutter, electric tin snip that I got, and that's pretty slow too. That's one of the problems with this cutter. Seems like it waves off to the side and you cut a big notch out of it. Oh well. So if you can kind of take her slow and stay focused, it works. Okay, so we deal with that little problem. And this one, it's got that crazy edge there, so you can kind of line that up with the edge of the table. Take a little stick and just kind of bend it over. Kind of already bent the right way anyway, but so it looks like that. And the first fold is with the painted side out. Second fold, the silver side out. So basically you're folding it into a W. We're doing it lengthwise. So the pieces are 28 inches long. A little over 28. Sometimes kind of sticky where the ink is, so it's hard to get your hand to slide, but I like to just kind of pinch it and slide it till you kind of work it into a rounded edge instead of a crease. If you got a crease there, it wants to break right away, so I try to get as round edge there as I can, but still crimp her down so it's kind of touching in the middle. And put the hog ringing in, of course. Just enough room so you got string. Enough room for the string. These hold pretty good. Have had very few failures over the years. Been doing it this way for 20 years. And there it is. Trim off the corners so that you're dragging it through in the pond, you're dragging it through the weeds, then it'll kind of come through the weeds, but otherwise that straight edge catches on the lily pads, and by the time you're done farting around trying to pull it in, you've lost some leeches. You lose one leech out of every trap, that adds up to a lot of leeches, so better off just make it easier to pull up. So first fold is the painted sides out. Seems like the painted side, the painted folds usually catch a little more leeches than the silver fold. But that's not, I mean, that's, if you had to fold them the other way, it really doesn't make that much difference. And then of course my flaring stick has got a little slot in it. You just kind of slide that slot over, bend her back, so it kind of flares it up. On both sides. Helps to have a tin snips with kind of a long jaw on it. You don't have quite the jagged edges. Yeah. Now this one I kind of messed up on the one edge of it there, so my cutter kind of took off to one side. That's not going to matter. We'll be cutting that off anyway. Yeah, that's the right one. Flare the edge. Sure you got the right one. Just enough to take the corner off. And also when you're checking, it's not so hard to get the leeches right up out of the very corner. Otherwise you got that corner up there. You really got to dig, and most of the time you can't even get them out of there anyway. So this way they'll maybe won't hang up in that corner so badly. You got to close the stove door. It's getting kind of smoky. Love this stove. She's a good one. Really cranks out the heat when you need it, but really eats up the wood too. Well, kind of thinking of making a couple of short ones here. Basically got 14 and 3/8 inches. You got to mark that one. My pattern. So cut it. This works pretty good for cutting this one. Even cuts over that edge there. I don't know why it does that, but trimming these traps, still got this edge to go with. Okay, now these you got to fold just a third of the way. They're just 2-fold traps. They're a little flimsier and quite a bit smaller, but they do seem to work better in the jumbo ponds. The jumbo ponds you don't catch much anyway. But for some reason that 3-fold trap I think is a little bit stiff for the jumbos. They have a harder time squeezing in, and I think that's why this one works better, but I don't, who knows for sure. But they do seem, jumbos seem to like this trap a little bit better. But at the same time, that the big 3 funnel will catch 2 or 3 times the leeches. So if you got leeches in the pond, that's the one to use. And in general, you'll end up with a few leeches in every fold. And when you only get a few leeches in these folds, it's a lot less leeches. 2 folds, quite a bit smaller, almost as wide, I guess. But the jumbos, for some reason, like this trap better. I'm not sure why. I'll have a lot of pieces of tin to pick up. Yeah, I got the little guys over here. We'll give them a good side-by-side test again this spring and see which ones are one big advantage to these is you get twice as many out of your tin. That's not all bad. Try to keep track of the square edges and use those. End up a little bit straighter trap. Sometimes where that ink is, it's kind of sticky on the cloth gloves. That's kind of a pain to slide your hand back and forth on that. It makes a hole in your gloves kind of quick and easy. There. There's the two little ones. Once again, compare the two. This one weighs half as much as this one, which I guess weight matters if you have to carry them ways, but for some reason, this little 2 funnel, well, it's kind of nice too to only have to bait 2 funnels when you're checking. It takes a little less bait. So if they're not trapping very good, this is definitely a good trap. Well, jumbos in particular. Seems like the little ones you'll still catch more in this one, even if they're not trapping good, because you got a few in every fold. Like this one, a few in each fold. So right off the top, you're getting half again as much if it's the same amount per fold. So. Back to the 3-fold again. These are 28 inches long. I don't know how wide they are. Looks like after I trim the edge, it's about 22.5 wide. Been using this size trap for quite a while. It's the easiest ones for me to get. They work. There's a scratch. Wherever there's a scratch in the tin like that, that'll crack pretty early. If the hog rings are dull or they just kind of fit together, I don't know. It's a little harder to... New rings for some reason seem to work better than those older ones I just found. Yeah. So, then we put the float on. Now the float is just a noodle with a piece of black 3/4 inch pipe in it. I tie a double knot, or go 3 and then 1 double knot there, and then I make this loop down here. This is just a bowline loop. But when the trap's in the water, you get your paddle, and just a little bit too far away, you can't quite reach it. You get pretty used to that paddle. That's just an extension on your arm. So I just reach out with the paddle and hook it there. So that's why I want that loop there. It still holds the plastic in the float good. Need the plastic so it can't tear out. So anyway, typically we just make a little bowline down here. The bowline doesn't seem to slip at all. It doesn't, with this kind of string, it doesn't ever come loose. Make sure you pull her both ways. So it looks like that. Good to go. Do that again. More, I got the little loop, float tied on. Oh, and the strings are, with the loops tied, still looking about 9-10 feet. I end up trapping a lot of leeches deeper because it seems to me, especially in the spring, the big ones are, you'll have a deeper catch, or I mean a bigger catch out of deeper water. I don't know what it is. I mean a bigger catch as far as size of leeches, but volume too. Once it gets so warm, they hit the shoreline, then you'll do better. And in the shallow water as far as quantity, but you still have bigger leeches almost all summer in the deeper water. I don't know why that is, but everybody wants bigger leeches all the time, so one more here. Make sure you pull your bolt line tight both ways and it'll be just fine then. It's a little bit of a sharp edge when you're wrapping on this. Sometimes it would pay to put a little piece of tape on there, but over the years I have not had that many strings cut. They might just, a couple strands might cut a little, but got traps that are, 3-4 years old and they've been wound up a few times. They seem to do pretty good, so try to keep it down to as minimal amount of work. It's already a lot of work. Helps to bend her down like that on the folded part holder. Wrap it around. It's important to always stick the float under the strings the same way every time, so I always go from the top and shove it in. Otherwise, if you don't pay attention to that, and then when you get to the pond, if I'd stuffed it in from the bottom, then when I push it out the top, it's all tangled up. So you got to remember to always stick it in one way. And I kind of, we settled on the top years ago, so seems to do it. But yeah, so there's your, now we'll put a name on it, put a clothespin. I like to leave the clothespin up here on the string to kind of help hold the string in place till we set it, and I put the clothespin on down here. Also, it kind of pays to sometimes stick your hand in there and just make a little bit of an opening more, because sometimes it's folded a little tight and kind of hard for them to get in. They need to be able to get in. Most time they'll work into a pretty tight spot, but seems like not always. Yep. Seems like numbers are important on leech traps. So